Y'all, this was such a fun conversation. I know I say that every time. I'm telling you, I absolutely adore Heather Shepard. So Heather is an instructor where I got my quantum biology certification. And so that is how I learned about SunlightRx, because I learned that from Heather. So I wanted to have her on the show to talk about SunlightRx. She also has Sunlight Diet. She's an ancestral foods chef. And she also, she is a classical homeopathic practitioner. So I reached out to Heather when I was still having lots of headaches, and I just couldn't figure the headache piece out, even though my energy is amazing and I was feeling so much better. And but I couldn't figure the migraines out. And so I contacted Heather. I've been working with her, and so far it's been awesome. No headaches, but also just having a lot more deeper healing, cellular healing. So I wanted to talk to her about SunlightRx, and I love her take on gut health. It's right in line with what I believe about gut health, but particularly about the sunlight and gut microbiome. Super exciting. We talk a little bit about food, and then of course we talk about classical homeopathy. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Certainly head to the show notes and check out heathershepard.com. And if you are interested in a quantum class, I am teaching quantum classes, and we are now breaking those down because the feedback that I got is that it's awesome. It's just a lot. So we have a Heal Thyself series, and I would be happy to have any of you come and learn more about quantum techniques for your health. So you can check that out at my website, nourished-soul.com. So thanks for being here, and happy healing. I'm so excited to talk to you, Heather. I'm so excited. I'm always excited to talk to you, but just to be able to record it for other people to hear it and to spread the word is very exciting. So thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I know you're busy. So I want to start with sunlight because it is free. It's like free medicine, right? And so good place to start. And I thought we could probably weave in a little bit of your story and how you came to understanding that sunlight was so important.
Yeah.
And I'd love to talk about gut health and sunlight because that's super fascinating to me.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit about the food stuff too, but I think we got to talk about homeopathy too, because I'm so excited about homeopathy. So if we have time, I think we can do it. I think we can do this. But I mean, your energy is like sunshine. I mean, it really feels like sunshine. And I don't know if you've always been like that, because I don't know. I feel like as a Division I basketball player in college at 5 feet tall, I know you're a dynamo. That tells me that you're a force. You know, I'm 4'11", so I'm always for the short basketball players.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know you were a dynamo before growing up, but was your energy always like sunshine?
Oh man, it's a good question. I would say if you ask my family and friends and wife, there would be a resounding yes.
Okay.
But actually there was a period after and I know we'll get into this with when I was in this transition period between athlete and healer, and when I got in a car accident and got a TBI, a brain injury. It was slight, it wasn't major, but it was definitely had very long-term consequences. And so when I was healing my brain injury, life was like, you can still be like sunshine, but it was very much a slower pace. It was very much a more internal healing process. It was very much me having to go inwards with all my emotions and my physical body, which I hadn't paid much attention to at all up until that point. I was 23 when the accident happened, and in probably about a week, I think I'll be 40. So, you know, it's been a journey. So
yay.
Yeah,
it's a journey.
So,
right.
Yeah. So I would say for the most part, yes. And then there has been some, especially after the accident, there was definitely some like introversion, introspection, and energy going on with some deep soul searching. It was a tricky and tough transition from athlete to healer for sure, because I had never considered myself, anything other than an athlete up until the accident. So yeah.
Right. And you got your dream job after college working with athletes. So you're still in that world when you had the car accident, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It was for at least a few years. Yeah. Before and after the accident. And no, it was my dream job. I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for the rest of my life. I mean, it was like, if you're an athlete and you think of any big name athlete, then they likely showed up at this training center, and I worked with them, and it was like just jazzed and pumped to be in that environment. And it was also eye-opening in a lot of other ways to see how poorly a lot of them treat their body, how poorly they treat their marriages and relationships. And so it was very much eye-opening in many ways. But when I graduated college, I mean, I definitely wouldn't say this at this time. I would never want to go back to that job. But when I graduated college, I was like, oh, dream job. I'm going to do this forever.
Right. Well, no, thank goodness, because I mean, I'm sorry, but thank goodness you went on a healing journey to get your own stuff figured out, which is what all of us, right? We're always, I think you and I got a few years on you, like 12, but that's not that much, just in terms of like going into trying to figure out our own health. And then for a lot of us, it's like, well, I've figured out these cool things. I want to help other people figure this out so that they don't have to feel awful. And not everybody feels awful. You see a wide range of people, I imagine, but you get some of the harder cases, cancer, traumatic brain injuries, like really severe stuff going on.
Yeah. I mean, really severe. Last week I had like a schizophrenia client. I have a lot of autism clients. I mean, it is a wide spectrum. And then you have a common cold, which is like, oh, it's a drastic difference, but everybody needs some sort of care.
And I just want to say I'm grateful personally that you see those of us who are, have smaller thhes, have figured a lot of things out. Like, don't leave us out, because I was just thinking when you were saying, like, when you were talking about the introspection and how you went. So a lot of, my thing, I won't go into my history, but just some of the traumas and stuff, I was sort of introspective for forever. And so, and just dealing with my own stuff. And it really wasn't until you suggested that being touched and being like more, and I was like, oh, I don't think so, Heather. Like, I don't see how me being like more interested, I'm interested in people, but more kind of extroverted and out. I was like, I don't see how I don't know if I like that part of the remedy, but okay.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see. So we can talk about homeopathy whenever you want, but I thought, because you were already working in homeopathy, you've done tons of training and tons of your own healing, like all kinds of stuff, I imagine. I would imagine acupuncture, I mean, everything. So you were already doing homeopathy and had some benefit when you figured out sunlight.
Absolutely. Yes.
That right?
Yes.
So I don't know which one you want to talk. I just feel like sunlight is so helpful for people.
Yeah, let's start with that one, because I think it's one that's fully accessible to people, and people can kind of grasp it. And homeopathy is a little bit of I mean, we'll get into that, but it's really interesting because it used to be, before the Flexner report came out in 1910, it used to be a core component of medical training.
Right.
I mean, the Maine, Drexel, Stanford, Columbia, all these places.
Boston,
yeah, exactly. It was a core element until the Flexner came into play, but that we can get into that. But so it's actually become more known because it's been swept under the carpet since, the early 1900s. But sunlight, man, it was like, I wasn't even trying, honestly, when it came to figuring out sunlight. I was listening to a little bit of what, Jack was saying about sunlight, and I was like, this sounds like a good idea. And so, and I started to hear more and more people talk about the benefits of sunlight. And at that time in my life, I was struggling with sleep. My sleep was just trashed.
Okay.
It was trashed. I was having high anxiety. I would get headaches when I went outside in sunlight. My energy sucked. It was like, it was really poor. And I was like, for somebody in their, mid to late 20s, I shouldn't be feeling like this. There's like red flags. And I tried all the things. I mean, homeopathy came just probably after sunlight. It was kind of around the same time, but maybe just slightly after. It's hard to say, but
yeah, got it.
But I had tried literally all the things, acupuncture, and I studied it and went to school for it, and chiropractic, and all my medical tests were clear, and they said I was fine. And I was like, you guys, I feel not fine. I feel like the opposite of fine. So, I think I can't remember where I heard it now. But someone said, get up and watch the sunrise and it'll help to balance your hormones. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I've tried everything else. Why not just start waking up with sunrise and going out? And so I kind of nonchalantly did. I would wake up and I'd go out there, and we live at high elevation. So even like today, it's like 20 degrees Fahrenheit. But the sun is shining bright. I was literally outside naked as a baby this morning. Not cold, because we're like almost 8,000 feet. So we have a pretty strong solar gain all year round. So I started going out in this sunlight, and it was the spring. And I started, a few days, I had more energy, and I noticed I was like, I don't want to go inside and work on my computer, because I don't want to work online. That's like, I was doing a lot of more of that at that time. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to stay outside in sunlight. I feel amazing. Why am I not getting headaches in the afternoon light? Why am I no longer pale? And I'm like, it's like, what is going on here? So I wasn't outside in sunrise for 5 minutes. I was legit out there for an hour.
Right. Like,
my brain needed it after that injury. And if anybody has a chronic condition, at least when you're first starting your SunlightRx practice, the longer the better. And I know it may be a time suck, or it may get in the way of your schedule, but I'm telling you, it is like,
oh, it's magic.
It's magic. It's so worth it. It's incredible.
Yeah. It is.
I know you know.
Well, yeah, I do. But I, so I love when I already kind of knew about you because of Sarah Kleiner. I had seen you on Sarah Kleiner, a little bit of the interview. And then when you showed up as an instructor in the quantum biology, I was like, woohoo! So excited. But I thought I knew a lot, actually, until you really helped me understand through SunlightRx the importance of priming the body. I kind of accidentally, somebody told me that sunrise was important. I trusted them. So I just started doing that. And I didn't really understand the light frequencies and what that was doing for my hormones. I had no idea that it was packing up melatonin and, getting that recycled and bringing on cortisol online. I had no idea we were making our serotonin. My background's in mental health, right? No idea that we were making our serotonin from UVA light. It just sort of happened that way. And for me, I was already doing that just because I happened to be walking. I walked a lot during UVA light, not because I was trying. But then I learned that my vitamin D was 20. And I was like, oh, shoot, that's terrible. And so I started doing more sun sessions outside during UVB light, got my vitamin D up, and then I just couldn't believe like how much it helps your mood, but energy. And then things like, what you're helping me with homeopathy, clean up some of the rest of this stuff, but I was reacting to everything.
Oh yeah.
Just super reactive to all different kinds of food, like all this stuff. And I noticed the more I was in the sun, the better that was getting.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
No, it can be a really amazing and unexpected bonus of being in the sun. Yeah.
Mhm. And really, SunlightRx is like 4 steps for people.
Yeah.
But can you talk more about like this priming? Because I know people
Yeah.
don't, they're like, oh, but I burn.
Yeah.
Oh, but and like I have headaches in the sun,
Yeah.
or they're worried about what the sunlight is going to do to their eyes.
Oh man, yeah. Yeah, this is a good one. So, okay, let's start with the priming, because most people do have the misconception, because we've been taught, especially people on a lower Fitzpatrick, and Fitzpatrick is just the way that we can categorize like skin tone, skin color. The higher up, the darker the skin, the lower down, the paler the skin. And so people think when they have paler skin or a lower Fitzpatrick that they have to reduce their sun exposure because they will burn. And that is absolutely true if you just go outside in afternoon light and fail to prep your skin and your cells to absorb the afternoon sunlight. So nature is like, it's just ingenious how this is set up, because in the morning, and a lot of people are like, Heather, I was outside doing my sunrise getting vitamin D. And I was like, wait a minute.
We're not getting vitamin D there, babe.
You're not getting vitamin D there. I mean, awesome that you're out in there.
Right?
Yeah. But the vitamin D thing doesn't show up till later in the afternoon. So let's just pause there. But you have set the stage by prepping your skin, by being in morning sunlight, because the main light frequencies at that hour are red light and blue light, and exposure to these light frequencies from sunlight preps the skin. It's like laying down I'm cautious of this word, but a natural sunscreen, so that when UVB light shows up in the afternoon, you absorb more of that light and you actually don't burn. And so nature like sets the stage for you. If we can get outside in the morning light, expose our skin and our eyes to that light, then the less susceptible we'll be to UVB light damage later in the day. And so it's really interesting that at sunrise, you have red light and blue light. So that preps your skin. But not only that, it starts this release, like you mentioned, of cortisol from the anterior pituitary gland. So they have wonky cortisol release patterns. They get their cortisol tests, they get their Dutch back, and they're like, oh, my cortisol release patterns are, I'm releasing cortisol at the wrong time of day, more so at night versus the day. And we want it to be first thing in the morning.
Right.
So when you look at the sunrise, or in the direction of sunrise, and your eyes receive that stimulus, your body starts to release cortisol, and it's like this trickle. And then gradually, as you're outside, blue light increases in the sky as the sun moves towards its apex. And as the blue light increases in the sky and in sunlight, more and more cortisol is gradually released.
Right.
And so this preps us for like having more energy and preventing energy crashes in the afternoon, and balances the hormones. And also it is another way that prevents UVB damage. So the more blue light from sunlight, which is really different than the blue light like from a screen or artificial lights, it's really different.
Right.
The more we're exposed to that, the more prepped our physiology is and our cells are to receive UVB light. And there are a lot of benefits to UVB light, and we can cash in on those benefits when we prep our skin and our cells and our eyes and our brain to receive that light.
Right.
So,
yeah. So
go ahead.
Well, I was just thinking, when people are afraid of what it's doing to their eyes, I just want you to mention how important it is to actually get the light frequencies in our eyes. Not, I sun gaze now, but you don't have to sun gaze. You don't have to stare into the sun, but to, you know, to not be afraid, because that's actually an important piece to the whole puzzle.
Oh man, it's so important. We've been trained to wear sunglasses to block the light from our eyes. And honestly, there are a couple times you may be able to sun gaze, and that's first thing in the morning when the sun is just coming above the horizon, and maybe at sunset when it's just going below the horizon.
Correct. Yeah.
Other than that, we don't want to stare at the sun, and your body won't let you anyway because it'll be too bright. But you want it looking in the direction of the sun, or just being in sunlight. When light enters your eyes, our main circadian regulating hub is right behind our eyes.
Right.
And so our hormones, our metabolism, our circadian biology, meaning how our body tells time, is literally all regulated and determined by the type of light that enters your eyes. So if you're outside, you're getting all this natural light into your eyes, you're balancing your hormones, you're balancing your thyroid, you're balancing your metabolism and your sleep. And if you're inside in front of a screen all day and you know, it's a blue light screen, or it's like LED lights or fluorescence, then there can be some major issues and consequences from those sort of practices that the mainstream has just, you know, implemented and taught us nothing about, you know.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think the only time that I don't ski much, but if I were to ski, I would probably wear sunglasses.
Yeah.
And I don't even know where my sunglasses are anymore. I don't even wear them on the boat. But a lot of people are worried about the reflection, like off of light or off of snow. So I didn't know if you want to comment on that piece. Like, otherwise, just get rid of your sunglasses.
Yeah, I think the major one, I'm not as concerned about when somebody's on the water.
Yeah, me either.
Maybe unless they're going like super fast, like if the boat's going super fast, and the same thing with skiing, like cross country skiing, I'd say no big deal. But if you're like flooring it down a mountain and you're skiing, that is a really good time to wear some sort of eye protection. And then when you get at the bottom of the slope, take your goggles off. Yeah. So the brightness of the light and the velocity of which somebody's going like across the water, more so down the slope, like down the mountain, that's when you would want to put on some sort of eyewear. Most people don't know that, so I'm glad you brought it up. But yeah, that would literally be the only time I would suggest that.
Yeah, yeah. And I just sort of naturally started doing that, and now I'm very I just can't handle inside lighting. So now I can't stand it. And I think some people are concerned about that. It's like, oh, well, if I start doing this, like they feel like they need the sunglasses, but I promise if you're getting out in early morning light and around sunset, if you can, you'll just get better. You just won't be as sensitive. It will take time, but then you might be more sensitive to all the lights and all the electronics inside. It will bother. I mean, it bothers me now.
Yeah, which you should be. I mean, you know,
that's a good thing.
You literally should be. And if you go out and you practice your SunlightRx and you're out there and you're noticing, oh, my eyes are watering, or you know, there's it's really bright and I have to squint. Just exactly as you said, the more it's just you do those things because your eyes are not used to being in that light. And so the more you do it, the less that will happen. And it's like when you go to the gym, you can't start like bench pressing 400 pounds. You have to like work your way up. And it's the same thing with sunlight. It'll take your eyes not that long, you know, a couple weeks tops usually to adapt. Yeah.
And you mentioned as naked as a baby, a newborn baby out there, as much skin as possible.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ideal. The more surface area we can get exposed to sunlight, then the quicker you'll reap the benefits, all the healing benefits of sunlight, which are so many. I mean, cellular repair, energy production, sleep, mitochondrial healing, cellular healing. There's like literally thousands of benefits from being in sunlight.
Mhm.
And the more surface area you have exposed, the quicker you will reap those benefits, and also the more parts of your body are going to have those benefits as well. Like for women, actually getting the breast tissue in sunlight can be really helpful, can be I've heard many people talk about how it being an antidote to breast cancer and inflammation in that area and congestion and lymph congestion and you know, so and if you can get your gut, like I know you mentioned gut health, if you can get your gut in your abdomen and your liver in sunlight,
Yeah.
man,
100%. Yeah. That's a good segue to gut health. But I just want to say too, especially for people who have had eye surgery or eye problems with their eyes, or they feel like they can't take their glasses or their contacts off because they're at work and they need to see, or whatever it is, if you can get some skin in the game, or if
yeah,
you're driving and just roll the window down, like do
yes,
whatever you can to get this light,
yes,
regardless of how you have to do it. And if you
that's
can
right.
get more skin in the game, you're going to
Yes,
benefit more from that. I do
100%.
know that there are a lot of people, before we hit gut health, I could probably talk for on gut health for a long time, but people are worried about like the sun spots.
Oh yeah.
And I've read some that can be heavy metals or other like things that
Yeah.
are built up, but I've noticed in me
Mhm.
it's gotten better. I mean, it just keeps
Mhm.
getting better the more I keep working on my mitochondrial health
Mhm.
and getting more and more in the light.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good question, because a lot of people are worried about sun
Yeah.
damage, and you
Yeah.
know the it could, you know, pull some stuff out and bring it to the skin.
Mhm.
It could, because the skin is our largest organ.
Largest organ.
It's a largest part of our immune system. It has the greatest accumulation of B and T cells, which are huge for our immune system. And so if you have spots showing up on your skin, or eczema or a rash or anything skin related,
Mm-hmm.
this is actually a much better sign, because if that stuff wasn't coming out of your skin, it would be wreaking havoc on your liver or your breast tissue or your pancreas and setting you up for some chronic disease.
That's a good point. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the sun, when you get in it and these things start to detox out of you, it's like your internal organs pushing them up to the surface.
Mm-hmm.
And so your body can get rid of them. And just like you said, usually over time, those things naturally fade.
Yeah. And I understand, because I too can get scared of
Yeah.
something popping up. I'm like,
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
so to understand that, and I just see things differently every single day. I'm learning more.
Yeah.
So for people to, because I thought I knew a lot, like,
Yeah. I
so to
know.
just stay open, right? It's all, things that you thought you knew, or things that you thought you had a handle on. So
Hmm.
for me, it's just to realize that things are rarely as they seem, and just to stay
Yeah.
open to it. And I think
Yeah.
listening to your podcast has really helped me. Sometimes, it's Primal Pioneer. We'll make sure people know about it. Sometimes it's just I'm like, oh yeah. But often it really makes me think, because what I thought I knew after 25 years in clinical mental health counseling,
Yeah.
and to think about things like addiction and
Yeah.
anxiety from this whole different perspective,
Yeah.
really interesting. I mean, just really powerful to just shift the way that you're thinking about things, including sunlight.
Yeah.
So many people are afraid of sun. So I think
Yeah.
if they don't take anything else, like the sun is not trying to kill you. It's actually really important. And for hormones, like if people don't,
Oh
if
man.
most people will say, oh yeah, my hormones are all jacked up, or my
Yeah.
sleep is terrible. This
Yeah.
is the way that you repair
Yes.
those issues. Right.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I want you can also you can say whatever you want, but also like time out there. The
Uh-huh.
more traumatic brain injuries, cancer,
Yeah.
the longer you want to be out there. Right.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you know, of course it's amazing if you're out for 5 minutes, but if we're thinking of the sun in therapeutic terms,
yes,
which it definitely has these qualities to it, we have to carve out time in our lives to spend more time in sunlight. And in the SunlightRx, which is, you mentioned, it's the 4-step protocol that I put together to helped heal my TBI and that I've been using on my clients, that just teaches you how to go out in each frequency, how much time to spend. Like if you can spend 30 minutes out there, amazing. If you can spend more than that, great. But if you can only start with, 5 or 10 minutes, start where you are and put some make some goals to extend that over time, because the more you're able to do that, the better you'll feel, for
for
sure.
sure. 100%.
Yeah.
And it does, I had to rearrange my life. Like
Exactly.
at first I was like, oh, when the hell am I going to work? Like,
Yeah.
this is crazy. I'm outside all the time, taking breaks outside. And I had to figure out too, like I just got a cheap bikini, like the tiniest bikini I can. I would be out there naked if the neighbors wouldn't, probably complain. But I think that's just like the smallest thing I can. I just got one from Target, like the cheapest thing. And I throw it on. I whip off whatever, throw it on, go out there, and then throw my clothes back on. I mean, it definitely took some time to figure it out.
Yeah, agree. Same thing. And you'll figure it out as you go. Yeah. And you'll also be like, oh my gosh, I feel my depression lifting, or my digestion improving, or my sleep improving. And that will typically be a really good motivator to, oh, okay, I can get 5 more minutes today. I can get 10 more minutes today. Tomorrow I can get 20 more minutes. And you'll like, it's.
Yeah. And then you're
just
pudding. Completely committed. Like my window is open right now. Like you will figure out how to work your desk in a way that you can like be outside or be in the light, or you work it out. But I do want to just mention to people that it is a little overwhelming at first when you're trying to figure it out.
It definitely can be. And start with, start wherever you are, whatever you can do, and make goals to gradually increase, and you will notice a big difference.
Actually, that's my favorite thing about you, Heather, is that you're so non-judgmental, and you're like, just start where you're, and like so many things that I'm like, okay, Heather, this is what I did. And you're like, okay, it's all right. Like it's, I don't know, in your head, you might be going, well, you did what? You know better. But you don't come across that way at all. And I think that's super helpful. Yeah.
I mean, we've all been through so much. Everybody has a unique story, whether it's some sort of abuse or alcoholism or drugs, or who knows, everybody's been through something. And so we can't just, we have to be, I'm one who's like very cautious with my recommendations. There's also a lot of dogma out there today. There's also a lot of spiritual cults out there today. And it's like, you want to be really cautious as to how you present this information so other people can really receive it and make it applicable to their own lifestyle. So I am definitely,
for sure,
all about non-judgment, for sure.
Which I appreciate. So let's talk about gut health, because I don't think people understand. I mean, I started teaching gut health in 2016, and what I have learned from then to now is just like night and day. And you can't just start with the most readily, you can start anywhere you want, but the most readily available information isn't really all that accurate or helpful, and because it's such a new science. But you really got to dig in weird places and kind of put it together yourself. And so I don't think people realize our food definitely matters, but light is more important in terms of this matching what we're eating with our light environment. Yeah.
There's this might be a good place to weave in homeopathy as well.
Because, okay, good.
I think we can combine everything with gut health, because so let's just start really basic. And any probiotics that anybody's taking, it's probably a huge waste of money. Let's just start with that one.
Yep.
Because your body literally produces gut bacteria based on the light you're exposed to and the food you eat. And it's also dependent on the amount of medications or antibiotics you've taken throughout your life. Those three things are the biggest influential factors on your gut health and what's the state of your gut microbiome.
Right.
So starting basic with sunlight,
yeah,
y'all have heard of the gut-brain axis. We've all heard of that. And so we just talked about earlier how when sunlight hits your eyes, it triggers and stimulates your metabolism, your hormones, all these things. It also connects via the vagus nerve, the gut and the brain. And so the light that hits your eyes, let's say, it's summertime and UVB light is out and your eyes get that stimulus, it will send that message to your gut via the vagus nerve as well. And your gut will produce specific bacteria based on that light. So when UVB light's present, you're going to get a whole new diverse set of gut bacteria versus if you live somewhere that has a winter time when UVB light isn't available, your gut microbiome will change when UVB light goes away.
Right.
And so I can't even tell you how many thousands of bacteria are produced depending on if UVB light's there or not. And that hasn't even been studied, I think, because I'm just going to say it, these fools don't even make this connection. So it's like I think like there's a lot of room for growth there.
Right. Well-meaning, lovely researchers trying to understand, but they're looking at like probiotics on certain things. You're like, move on. Like, let's, just from a mitochondrial perspective, come on, move on. Like, we just know that circadian rhythm and supporting our circadian rhythms in the sunlight is so much more important. But even there is some decent research on red light and the diversity of the microbiome, which is really interesting. Because, I think a lot of people, I'm a fan of red light panels, but red light's free, man, all year round from, dawn to dusk outside.
It is.
And so that's really interesting. So the more we can get our, our skin in the game, our bellies out there. It's just, and nobody really understands exactly why. Maybe you do, but I haven't seen anything that's really talking about why that's happening. It diversifies the microbiome like that. I know it's anti-inflammatory, so that makes sense that when there's less inflammation, the body can do what it's supposed to do. But other than that, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, I think that's another big area of room for growth. I mean, we know it produces ATP energy in the mitochondria. People with gut health issues, their mitochondria are probably working at minimum efficiency,
Weak.
So that could be another reason why. Light has a huge influence on your health. And if you're eating foods that are grown in the light environment, the same light environment that is around you, if it's wintertime and you don't live somewhere where there's UVB, like you shouldn't be eating foods that are grown in strong UVB. That's going to send a mixed message to your gut microbiome. Now, that message is kind of getting more commonplace and widespread now. And just by eating like seasonally and getting sunlight, you may be able to make massive breakthroughs with your gut health and with your health. But there's often time when you get to a place, and I had this experience with my brain injury, I had massive health improvements. And then I got to this point, I was like, but I still struggle with the X, Y, and Z.
Right.
And that's when I look at things like homeopathy, because there are just certain things we're exposed to modern day.
Right.
That are very hard on our immune systems and our systems. Antibiotics, any type of prescription drug, any type of vaccination is like putting a pile of bricks on the immune system.
Yeah.
And much of our immune system is in our guts and our skin, and so this can set the stage for gut health issues, immune system issues. We have all these things blowing up with histamine and oxalates, and I actually am definitely on the fringe when it comes to, I don't believe in any of that stuff. I believe that the root of it is that we've dumped too many antibiotics into our gut, and now we're so uber sensitive to things that we put in our bodies that our gut has these intense histamine-like reactions just by eating, certain foods that didn't cause histamine response, even 50 years ago.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I learned that because I learned that from you. Let me slow down. Because I mean, I think it's interesting, these defense chemicals in the plants. I think that's interesting to me. And I have had a ton of healing on carnivore. So, but what I love is, and you were vegetarian for a bit.
Destroyed my hormones. Yeah.
Just like we all do what we do, right? Whatever.
No, exactly. And no judgment, right?
I am all about meat for mental health. Like, I just think it's super important. But what I've learned from you is more about like, it's the light in all the food that we eat, and trying, getting local food. And there's also a time to be eating, pastured pork. There's a time when it's supposed to be slaughtered. Like, I was trying to think of the word. Like, there's a time and a place for all these things. And with the fermented foods, like, I was even reacting poorly to all of the fermented stuff and all of that. And we shouldn't be. Like, it's actually, if we are, so it's fine, in my opinion, to, take out what's causing problems while you're healing and you're figuring that out. But if you actually eat an ancestral seasonal diet that's grown locally, then you're going to improve your health by 1,000 times.
Yes.
So or I like nutrient dense foods too. So I think that's why I really believe that from a mental health perspective, the amino acids and the nutrient dense foods, we need to have like really good food in our life. And then also just helping people understand that when you're opening packages and stuff that's from, or you're eating kiwi and you're nowhere near New Zealand, I mean, you're just confusing your microbiome. Not only not your microbiome, that too, those microbes are not present because it's not matching your environment. But also, if you're living indoors and you're eating like food that's not grown near you, it's confusing your mitochondria.
Yes.
Like, mitochondria cannot figure out where you are in time and space.
Yeah. It's very chaotic. It's very confusing to the system. If we think about a truly ancestral diet, it wasn't like, green banana powder from Hawaii or whatever, if you didn't live there, and it wasn't kiwis in January and, so forth. A truly ancestral diet is truly a seasonal diet. And big fan of like really good quality meat for mental health, for just the hormonal health all around. Like I literally destroyed my hormones on when I think a lot of people in the health who are like on the health track have some stint with vegetarianism or veganism or a juice fast that goes south. And so that was like my early 20s, and I was like, at year 7 of the vegetarian diet, I was like, we better try something else here, because I look jaundiced and have no energy, and I'm doing this for health reasons and I'm getting the opposite effect. And so that was a fun experiment. But
you found a way. But you're also an ancestral chef, so I mean, you wear all these different hats, and so that's really fun. That your food's beautiful. And just to connect with the food that you're eating. I think if people can just be more connected, just eat seasonally. Like, don't worry about the rest of it. Just eat seasonally. That would probably help people and lay off of the processed crap, obviously. But it's hard because people are there's a lot of pressure, I would say, these days to, and information about what is healthy that is actually not helpful at all.
It's true. It's really confusing. There's a load of, there's like information overload. And then people, try really intense protocols and things, and usually can end up doing a little bit more harm than good. So I'm always cautious
right.
with like really hardcore practices.
Mm-hmm.
I'm usually really cautious of things like that. And to, like you said, if you do just a couple things to support your health, watch the sunrise, be in morning sunlight to start with, and eat seasonally, those are amazing places to start, and you will definitely begin to see some shifts with your health just by doing those two things, just by starting really basic.
Yeah. Like just going to the farmer's market and seeing what grows in your, or you can look online now too, but just to see what actually grows near you.
Right.
That's just eye-opening. So even if you don't choose it for a while, if you're still sort of stuck on something that you don't want to give up, or you think it's healthy because you're keto and so you're eating berries, but berries are not in season near you. I've done that. It's like, and I also, for me, when I was eating a strict carnivore diet, I wasn't strict. I wasn't I was just trying not to have reactions all the time. And it was doing a lot of healing. I was doing a lot of healing. So it was helpful for me, also from an addiction perspective, but also, I just started going, well, it doesn't match. My body must think it's in winter all the time. And I live in Florida. Like, that's a mismatch, so just thinking about that.
Exactly. We can go the other direction too. For people who live in the tropics or have strong UVB, it's probably, maybe you can use carnivore or keto like short term to help you get back on track for maybe couple months or a few months or so. And then gradually help to adapt to your environment. I mean, yeah, I think you nailed it with that one. I'm glad you mentioned it, because usually people don't think like, in those terms.
No, we're not thinking in those terms. And I'm pretty well educated on like I'm studying nutrition all the time. And that's what I'm saying. You got to piece it together yourself at this point and take the information and see, and really test, trial and error. So is there anything else you want to say about homeopathy? Because what I haven't learned kind of high level here. I haven't yet learned about homeopathy, but I plan to learn a lot about classical homeopathy when I can learn that from you. Because I just think it's amazing. For me, I was feeling really good most of the time, like tons of benefit from the way my lifestyle changes, incorporating all these things, quantum techniques, all the stuff. But I was still having the headaches, right? And so, and probably some other stuff that we're going to work on eventually, because you told me I have to go slow. So I'm like, all right, I'll go slow. Just hit me with all of it. But I just think it makes sense to me that like heals like. Like when people have liver issues with their liver, I recommend that they eat liver. I mean, it makes sense to me, like heals like. And so that part of homeopathy makes sense to me. It's deep, man. There's so many different remedies and all this. I'm like,
it's very deep. Yeah.
But classical homeopathy, I think I don't know about the other ways of doing it, but has this potential to really get at the actual root. Because so many practitioners are like, oh, I get at the root. And I'm like, which root? Like the trees have tons of roots. But the way that you go about things, because it could be suppressed emotional stuff. I mean, it could be, residue from, I call it genetic residue. I know you have a different term for it, but like these trauma, it could be all of these things that are actually the root, and and homeopathy can address them.
Yes. Yeah. And when I use sunlight and diet as like a foundation. Those are foundational practices that every human being on this planet needs. Nature set it up that way. We need these things in order to thrive, to be healthy, on a foundational level. Now, usually most people will do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And they'll do all the right things on paper for their health, but they're like, just like you mentioned, I still have headaches. Like for me, I still had anxiety after I did the SunlightRx.
Yeah.
I still had some PTSD symptoms, right?
Yeah.
I still came with all my genetic predispositions of diabetes and metabolic issues that my parents so wonderfully granted me.
Mm-hmm.
So I still had like those things, sunlight and diet won't clear those type of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so why I use homeopathy is exactly why what you mentioned here about it getting to the root, because we have these root disturbances in our cells, whatever you want to call it, genetic predisposition, epigenetic switches get turned on.
Right.
We call it miasms in homeopathy.
That's the word. Yeah.
They
Mm-hmm.
all mean the same thing, pretty much. They basically all mean the same thing. And so we come with these things. A family history of alcoholism is going to set the stage for your mental health, your physical health when you come into this world. If you have family history of STDs that were suppressed with antibiotics, that has a huge influence, whether you go back 10 generations or one. It'll have a huge influence on the health of the children you give birth to, on the next generation. These things don't go away with diet and sunlight. If you have a huge grief and you lose your mom and it's like soul wrenching and you're like, oh my God, I can't get over this, that cannot be rectified with diet and sunlight. So we can use homeopathy to individuate the treatment. We treat not just the physical symptoms, because standard homeopathy, allopathy, naturopathy, they all treat standard symptoms. You have this gene switched on for MTHFR, take this supplement protocol and, eat these foods. You have cancer, juice fast and take these supplements. But homeopathy is really unique in the sense that you understand in the intake the person's physical symptoms, but also their mental symptoms, their emotional symptoms. You look at the family history to see what miasms or genetic predisposition they're coming with, and you can tailor and individuate the treatment to work on all of these different layers. That's why I really consider homeopathy root cause medicine.
Right.
Because it can pull these things up from the roots that likely has been lingering in the gene pool for literally decades.
Right.
So
or who knows how far back.
Who knows? Yeah.
Right. And we'll do a part 2 and just talk. Maybe if I can talk you into doing a part 2, because I mean that it's huge and it's a lot. I just wanted to at least mention it because for me, somebody who's done a lot of healing, this was really helpful. But then for other people that I know that have done it, they weren't doing the healthy stuff, the sunlight. And so sometimes it actually might work the other way, where you need to clear something up so that you can just get yourself in the sun. Everything else is going to be so much more helpful, like the food and the light and circadian rhythms. All of that is going to be easier, I would say, or have a better effect when you're not, because when something is keeping you from even being able to do that.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Could go either way, right?
It could go either way. If somebody can't get out of bed in the morning, or if somebody gets headaches in the sunlight and you go in sunlight and it doesn't go away, then we have to look at some of these deeper root causes. There are a lot of people who do the SunlightRx and they come in with headaches. And I'm like, you know what? That's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. There's a deeper root cause we have to get to. So you can do your SunlightRx and not have a headache.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm glad you mentioned it. It's a really good point. And it's you have to start where your body wants you to start.
Right. Yeah. And I think for you as a healer and a practitioner that understands that and has different tools, it's really helpful to have a tool like classical homeopathy, I think. So
yeah.
I'm like, I know we're out of time because I don't want to, I don't know if you've got, I know you're super busy. So I want to respect your time and we can always talk about it later. But I also wanted to just, find out what nourishes your body, mind, and soul.
Oh man, that's
other than we've been talking about the sunlight and I know, well, I know your wife, I mean, of course, but I wanted you to just mention the farm too, because the plans for the farm, that's exciting.
Oh, it's so fun. Yeah, we just bought a small farm in northern New Mexico. It's very rural. It's about an hour from a grocery store in either direction. But we moved out here because there's no cell towers. There's really good sunlight. I think it's like 280 or 90 days of sunlight a year, which is pretty banging. It's pretty solid. And we wanted to create a farm and an environment with, all of we have 3 structures on the property right now. They're all hardwired. They all have like an old school landline. You can't use your cell phone. If you want to use your cell phone, I'm trying to see if I have it here, but I have this little Ethernet adapter that you plug your cell phone into, and you plug it into the Ethernet cord, and you can do your thing without getting, keeping it on airport mode. But anyway, we wanted to create this environment with a very low EMF footprint and a space where we can grow food and have animals. So we have like 40 chickens coming in March, and we're getting pigs and sheep, and but we're also setting up for people to come do healing and SunlightRx retreats and just get nourishing foods. And so that is all definitely in the works and will be available for people to come stay and heal and like be able to be in an environment like this to jumpstart their healing, and to get some, homeopathy and sunlight and food. And my wife is actually an amazing, very holistic therapist. And so that's thanks for asking about that, because we're really excited and stoked about it and getting the
I'm coming. Like Heather Crimson and I are already like, we'll be the first to sign up. Good. Meet there. But yeah, so I know all of that is nourishing to you. Is there anything else that's super nourishing that we haven't talked about to you personally?
Oh man, yeah, that's a good question. For me personally, what's the most nourishing, honestly, is being outside and cooking food. I love cooking food. I love cooking really good food. It's really nourishing to me. My wife can't cook to save her life. I don't know if she can cook toast, but she always says how she she never complains about a meal. But I love cooking, and I love being outside, and we have just national forest behind us for hundreds of acres. So it's just so rejuvenating for me and my soul to be able to do these podcasts and teach people this information and do homeopathy sessions, but then to walk outside my door and be in nature. It's like, oh man, it's really nourishing to me for sure. But what else is nourishing is doing podcasts like this and just connecting with like-minded people and creating community around health and healing. It's like, it's right up my wheelhouse too.
I love it. I'm so grateful that you're ether wired or whatever. You're wired up in there so that we can connect. It's awesome. I appreciate you, the person that you are, and that you keep putting more out there, and that you really make me think hard about some things, which I love. So, and then your help, as a practitioner too. I'm grateful for that. I'm looking forward to visiting the farm and also taking your course. Like good. I'll know when it's the right time and when you're offering it again, and because I know you've got the mini course that people can learn. But
I've got a foundations course. I have a foundations course that's just it's actually a prerequisite for anybody who wants to do. So I have the Foundations of Homeopathy course. It's like 8 modules. It's got to be somewhere around 7 hours or so. And it teaches you about homeopathy, classical homeopathy. People can take it whenever their heart desires.
Right.
And so it's there, and it's there to help people understand this medicine, how to start using it to treat themselves or their children with, I go over a whole thing on acutes. If somebody gets an ear infection or a cold or a fever, and how you can, approach these things from a homeopathic standpoint. Talks about root causes of disease and how we can go about rectifying that. Yeah, but that's up anytime on my site. And it's also a prerequisite every September.
Okay.
I start a 1.5-year practitioner training course for homeopathy.
Right. So I got to get my prereq in there before September. All right, I got it. I can do that. I'll be an empty nester in September, so
oh yeah,
great timing.
Yeah, for sure.
Exciting. So I love all the things you're doing. I think it's fun to know you. I'm grateful.
Likewise.
Yeah. Thanks for taking the time to be on the show too.